Good morning, everyone. This is an interesting clip. Yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a consortium of retailers who sent an open letter to Doug Ford and said, we should be able to open, right? Like all the little guys should be able to open. We should be able to open. We should be able to open. And Doug Ford said, no. And this guy is saying, basically in light of that no, shouldn't you be covering up places in the big box stores like for non-essential items? And Doug Ford pushes back on that a little bit. But he admits here, to me anyway, that it's not about the businesses spreading COVID-19. It's about changing the behavior of the consumer. Like, we don't want them going and making multiple stops on the way home. And maybe that stops the virus. Maybe there's some sound science in that. Could we see some? Where is it? Who's making this decision and what science is it based on? Because is the complete and total decimation of our small business economy in Ontario a balanced approach to fighting this virus? I think somebody else made that argument. So I'm just giving it voice or restating it here. But I don't think that that's a good way and a good balanced approach to dealing with this virus, especially considering, well, in the next tab, I'm going to show you, Brian Lilley talks about how retail is less than 1% of COVID-19 cases linked to retail, right? So retail is less than 1%. So that's just very, very interesting that the way to fight the virus is to completely decimate our small businesses. And sorry, that's just how we're going to do it. And there's no way to push back on this. There's no way to have a conversation about this. Listen to the question. Again, I don't like it. Why can't we cover up places in retail stores? Why can't we? This is not a solution. This doesn't make things fair. Making things fair would be opening up the small businesses. Making things fair is not limiting the consumer's choice on what they can purchase in a store, nor is it having the province decide what essential items are, because there's no way this guy can make decisions about what's essential for me. Thanks. Here's Doug Ford. Here we go.
Thank you very much. Happy to hear your back's feeling better, Premier.
Thank you.
On businesses, I know you said before it would be a logistical nightmare to cordon off non-essential items in stores, but it's already happening in some jurisdictions, and stores close off sections during parts of the year anyway. So just in the spirit of fairness to those smaller businesses selling the same items, if you're not going to allow them to reopen to in-store, have you considered just putting this on the bigger retailers? You know, close up, tape off stuff that smaller businesses can't sell, and then open up when they can.
Yeah, I've had this discussion, and I'll answer this, and I'll pass it over to the Minister of Health on the health side. But what the health table's trying to do is limit the amount of visits that you're out there. So I'll give you an example. If you're going to one of the big box retailers, it's kind of the one-stop shop, and I know it's not fair, believe me. I know it's not fair, but it really limits people from going out and making 4, 5, 6 stops on the way home to pick stuff up. And I've always said, for everyone out there that is out there, maybe really, I've had some protesters out there. Go online, shop online, order meals online, do everything online, and not
clumsy pivot. It doesn't make it fair to the journalist who's asking, just to make it fair, just have the big box guys cover things up. Merry Christmas, everybody. Now you don't get to go shopping because it's not essential. Ha ha ha. Like, honestly, what is this guy thinking? Seriously. Bad reporting, bad journalism, garbage. And Doug Ford's admission that the whole idea that the health table is using is they want to limit the number of stops people make on the way home. I don't know that that's justification to shut down our entire economy, to shut down businesses, to shut down restaurants, to shut down gyms and nightclubs. I just don't think that quite passes the muster. I just don't think that that's good enough. And I hope that it's challenged in court. I know Randy Hillier is talking about challenging it in court, and we'll get to that in a minute. Here's the article I was telling you about. That's 0.1%. That's the tiny percentage of COVID cases linked to retail, according to Ontario's own data. So why are stores and other low-spread businesses like restaurants and gyms shut down? Yes, that is a good question. Here's Brian Lilley. His own government stats show there's no proof of retail outlets spreading COVID, but Ford Nation is still saying no to a request from retailers to open up with restrictions and limited capacity in Toronto and Peel. Read and retweet. Here's Brian Lilley's piece on it. Did I highlight this? Hold on. This report is just based on the video we just saw, but there's some parts of it that are worth it, so I'll read through. A request by major retailers and the executives who lead them to allow all retail operations in Ontario to open up with strict limits was quickly shot down on Wednesday. Premier Doug Ford said he wished he could simply allow retailers to open up, but he can't. The Premier then realized that he actually has the power to do so, but that he won't. Quote, "I can't do that. I have to follow the advice of Chief Medical Officer," Ford said. What if the Chief Medical Officer is wrong? What if Dr. David Williams hasn't considered the options laid out by the retailers? The request from some of the biggest retailers in Canada was that all stores in Ontario's hotspots of Toronto and Peel be allowed to reopen with a strict 25% capacity limit. Why are they, I get that they're trying to open people up, but I don't understand why they're setting limits. There should be some mechanism that is automatically in place in this situation, and I know that this situation is unprecedented, but jeepers creepers, we can't have one doctor and one premier locking all the businesses down to bankruptcy and have them have total carte blanche to do it. It's not acceptable. Anyway, I don't like that these people are setting the limits, but regardless, there should be a mechanism in place. I don't think that the retailers or the premier should set it. I think it should be set independently, and I think it should be checked. I think there should be some verification system. Yes, there's lots of cases in retail, and so this is too high, so we'll reduce it by 10%, right? Not we'll lock everybody down until everybody's bankrupt, and then we'll maybe open up 5%. Garbage. What absolute garbage. What if the Chief Medical Officer is wrong, right? The request from some of the biggest retailers in Canada, right? Shutting down Toronto and Peel hasn't reduced the numbers of shoppers, the letter states. Of course not. They just go to the one store that they can go to. Instead, it has funneled those shoppers and the corresponding health risks into fewer, increasingly crowded stores. Hicks is someone Ford had said he sought advice from during the pandemic, but on this point, he won't be listening. Strange, because he's not even listening to his own government statistics. New provincial data released Tuesday and cited by the retailers shows that retail stores have contributed that retail stores have contributed to the spread of COVID-19. Only 0.2% to 0.9% of recent weekly cases related to outbreaks have been associated with retail environments, according to the Government of Ontario's own statistics, the retailers point out. The answer from the doctors who favor lockdown measures, and there are many who do not, is that outbreaks don't account for community spread. Community spread are the COVID-19 cases that can't be traced. Let's scroll down a little bit. Last Friday, 8 weeks into what was supposed to be a 4-week closure of restaurants and a week into the closure of retail, the province reported 1,855 cases, or almost double the October 9 numbers. On Tuesday, there were 1,723 cases, most of them in hotspots. On October 9th, Toronto had 336 cases, while on Tuesday, the city reported 410 after dropping from 726 the day before. Peel went from 150 daily cases on October 9th to 500 on Tuesday. All the stats and data from the province shows these measures are not working, but Premier Ford stands by them, saying it's all because he has to listen to his doctor. Dr. Williams is not the one people in Ontario elected. He is not the one making the decisions. Ford is, and his decisions are not helping case counts, but instead are crippling businesses across the region. Yeah, it seems really just, odd, doesn't it? Odd and very, very sad. Joe Warmington's writing The Mall Where Christmas Came to Die. There are so few people, you likely won't catch coronavirus here. You certainly won't catch the Christmas spirit. In fact, if you were shooting a movie about where Christmas came to die, this mall would be an ideal location. Farid Sakidi, sorry if I got that wrong, Farid, says wants for Christmas is a chance to sell some of his famous Afghan kebabs to pay his rent and feed his 4 kids. It might have to be next Christmas. The owner of the Kebab Express in Woodbine Centre Food Court is not sure if he'll be able to hang on until then. I'm 7 months behind on my rent and owe them all $35,000, he said. Yikes, right? Farid, whose amazing food tastes recall the restaurants of Kabul where he grew up, doesn't give up easily. Giving up is exactly what many politicians and doctors did, throwing in the towel a long time ago. Everybody knows it, and with the latest retailer revolt, an open letter Brian Lilly wrote about today, it's on record that important people are openly saying it. At least no one dares to call the city's best-known CEOs yahoos or half-smart. They're essentially saying what the much-maligned Adamson barbecue guy was saying, or the Bolton toy store owner that Brian Pacifume has been writing about. Bankrupting Ontario's economy, this is it, is not a common-sense middle ground to battle the virus, right? I told you, somebody else said that, not me. The Woodbine Centre on Rexdale Boulevard and Highway 27 in the heart of Premier Doug Ford's own Etobicoke North riding is normally as close a trip to the North Pole for families as you can get this time of year. It's a magical place, but not this year. COVID-19 and lockdown restrictions on restaurants and retail stores have the iconic shopping venue appearing more like something from an Armageddon movie. It's spooky how store after store is closed, the chairs are all taped up, and the famous Fantasy Fair arcade is dark and lifeless. Surreal. It looks like a nuclear fallout site. The Christmas music is still playing, just makes it weirder. Or that Christmas music is still playing, just makes it weirder. Meanwhile, the packed Etobicoke Costco does not have these restrictions and apparently is a lesser risk to spread COVID-19. Although effectively locked down, the Woodbine Center is still technically open. Some stores are doing morbid curb pickup, and some are finding creative ways to getting around the rigid rules. Since Dollarama is deemed essential, a couple of other independent bargain outlets selling masks, hand sanitizer, and waffle ovens, Christmas decorations, and coffee machines decided they were too. Everybody should be open, but taking appropriate safety measures. As Anthony Fury wrote in Wednesday, the number of COVID-19 cases tied to retail is minuscule. In the Woodbine Center, the Christmas tree is still there. Santa's empty chair too. While Santa may not be an essential service, if you need a lottery ticket, the kiosk is just 20 feet away. When you have Santa's village blocked off with yellow crime scene tape guarded by steel gates to keep people out, it's time to admit that Christmas has been canceled. Bah humbug. Right, good one. Very interesting. Just generally, right? Like we're allowing ourselves to be masked. We're allowing the intake of our body to be covered when we're in restaurants and stuff in the name of safety, in the name of health. How inverted can you get, right? And in the vein of we're all in this together, 110,000 workers were okayed for paid furlough. $1.1 billion to pay people to not go to work, right? While retail stores just died because everybody was funneled into the big box alternatives. I thought this was an interesting note. Justice Center says government data shows lockdowns more deadly than COVID-19. And here's the data for all the deaths in Canada through 2016 to 2020. And you can see very clearly in 2016, 177,000, 2017, 181, 2018, 186, 2019, 190, 2020, 186. And so obviously the 2018 data is complete and 2020 is not, but we're still under 2019 for deaths, so that's very interesting. Here's also a chart of the age of mortality, right? Mortality rates by age group, and the purple here, that's 85 and older, okay? It hasn't changed. You can see 2016 to 2020. And all of this data is compiled in a very digestible way, right? And so they're starting apparently lawsuits across Canada to deal with this. But that's very interesting to note, right? We're all in this together, except some get paid to stay home and others are, have their businesses destroyed by government crackdowns because it's not about safety from a virus. It's not. Randy Hillier is having an interview. I thought he was going on a show, but he's having an interview with Dr. Hodgson. Sorry if I've got that wrong. I did get that wrong. Hodkinson. On Facebook today at 3:30, they're going to discuss why lockdowns don't work and how public health is doing more harm than good with their COVID-19 policies. I agree. Destroying all the businesses is probably a really bad idea. It's not going to work out very well. Provinces, this is manufactured consent, and I'll show you where this article jumps the shark. This is CP24, and they say provinces' lockdowns have been effective in curbing COVID-19 transmission, study finds. They've got a study that backs up. It's science, don't you know? It's science. Okay. A new study has found that the Ontario government's lockdown in the first wave of COVID-19 pandemic had a positive effect in curbing the spread of the disease. A positive effect? That's very sciencey sounding. I wonder what that means. The model-based analysis, that's where it jumps the shark. Do you know what I mean by jumps the shark? In an episode of Happy Days, Fonzie literally put on jet skis and his leather coat still, and he had I guess he had swim trunks on, and jumped over the shark that was terrorizing the kids in the swimming hole. And that's when Happy Days became unwatchable. This is when this became unreadable. But I read to the end of this paragraph here, the model-based analysis paragraph. So the model-based analysis of those measures was conducted by researchers at York University, led by director of the Laboratory for Industrial and Applied Mathematics, Professor Jinhong Wu. You see why it jumps the shark? I don't know. I'm suspect. I've got my very suspect glasses on. My in light of all the information we know about infiltration and the use of studies and modeling to get whatever kind of outcome you want. I would love to see the inputs of those models. No, I wouldn't. I mean, it's garbage. It's garbage. You can look at the lockdowns and see clearly. I mean, there are multiple long reports that lockdowns are causing much more harm than the virus itself. So the idea that the lockdowns had a positive effect is faulty. However, lockdowns continue in Manitoba. Brian Pallister hints high-level restrictions. They're not calling them lockdowns anymore. They don't like that word. May continue into winter months. May continue. Yes, once they've got power, they're not easily willing to give it up, right? Photo sparks backlash over enforcement of orange phase rules wearing of masks. Now, this woman was assaulted. Her account of the story, she was in the store, she left the store with the officers. Outside, the officers assaulted her and threw her on the ground. And so I'm bringing this up because the Woodstock Police Department spoke out about the incident after this sparked a backlash, apparently. And their statement is just garbage. It's really, really, like, basically they're like, we're in a pandemic and sorry that you didn't like the enforcement of this, but deal with it. But these people were the criminals. The police officers were the criminals here. This woman was exercising her right to have an exemption. The exemption is recognized by the province, by Section 22 orders, by basic human rights, Ontario human rights, by all sorts of different layers. You have the right to refuse to wear a mask. And having police assault you as you're complying when you're coming out of a store because you're not wearing a mask because they want to make an example of you, this is not appropriate. And the police's response here, I hope this woman sues them, and I hope that she wins by a lot. Here it is. I'll start here. The Force issued a public statement on its Facebook page on Tuesday addressing the police response Monday to, quote, a local business in regards to a customer who refused to leave the store following repeated requests to wear a mask. The message noted that while it is not customary for police to comment on a matter under investigation or before the courts, it is necessary that the Woodstock police respond to the community inquiry related specifically to why we responded. The statement did not dispute the Facebook poster's account of what happened. Instead, it reminded the readers of the pandemic, the state of emergency New Brunswick has declared, and the mandatory order setting out what is allowed and what isn't under the different phases of recovery. Now, as far as I understood, this is in Woodstock, so I don't know why they're talking about New Brunswick's emergency order. Back to this. The Woodstock Force respects that not all citizens agree with the enforcement aspects, said the statement attributed to Police Chief Gary Forward. People who question the validity of the enforcement were urged to resort to the court process. Our priority has and continues to be public safety of our community, and we will respectfully thank you for all your patience, understanding, and partnership in responding effectively to this pandemic. The police statement and the photo of the arrest have generated widespread public response, both in support of the enforcement and objection to it. Asked at a COVID briefing on Tuesday whether residents must provide proof of medical exemption to mask wearing when asked, Chief Medical Officer of Health Dr. Jennifer Russell referred CBC to the province's website. The website does not appear to directly address the proof of exemption issue, but does note that medical exemptions are allowed. At the same news conference, Education Minister Dominic Carty referred to backlash over enforcement in the early days of the orange phase and noted, quote, 4 tickets were given over the 5-day enforcement blitz after the Fredericton region turned to orange. I don't understand why they keep, is Woodstock in New Brunswick? And I've missed that. Like, I thought this was down the road, but apparently maybe it's in New Brunswick. They keep referencing New Brunswick. So I'm going to have to double check. Hold on. Here it is. New Brunswick at the top. I missed that. Here we go. Right? This is not Woodstock down the road in Ontario. So this is in New Brunswick, which is even worse in my opinion. It's a smaller area. Why is the education minister making this point? I don't get it. Right? I mean, unbelievable. Anyway, 4. So he's trying to minimize this by saying only 4 people were arrested or ticketed. So he says, so all the stuff you see on social media around people being arrested in parking lots, a large amount of this is simply not accurate. Well, this is accurate. Like, this is accurate. This is, there's video of this. And this is not appropriate, right? And why is the education minister speaking about this? I apologize for missing this on the, thinking that this was Ontario. I even went to the Woodstock Police Service website here looking for their statement on this because I wanted to read the whole statement, and I missed that it was New Brunswick, 1. And 2, I couldn't find the statement, right? I looked through their media release. I went to their Facebook page too. I still couldn't find the statement. And I looked here. Anyway, regardless, I couldn't find it, so I didn't open up all the media statements. I looked for one that was talking about the retail store, but none of them did that. Anyway, here is Health Minister Christine Elliott, and definitely in Ontario this time. Vaccine will not be mandatory in Ontario, says the Health Minister. Right? Very interesting. There is questions. So if next year Air Canada says that I can't fly on their planes unless I show proof of vaccination, or if a grocery store won't let me in unless I'm vaccinated, is that what you mean by no one is forced to take it? And yeah, I mean, that's a legitimate concern. There are people, I mean, right now being arrested in New Brunswick for not wearing a mask, just as a show of force. There are businesses being bankrupt just because they want to nudge people from making multiple stops to support their local retailer, right? And in places where nobody, I mean, if you don't get it at Costco and don't bring it home, then why would you drop it off at any of the retailers that you stop in on, right? Like, it's one of those things that it's very frustrating to have to deal with the mandatory and like the soft mandatory, right? Like it's mandatory, except it's not mandatory in the sense that we're enforcing it. It's mandatory in the sense that we're making businesses enforce it, and then giving the businesses large fines if they don't do that. Forcing the businesses into a policing situation, and I mean that puts people in an impossible situation. You've got like kids who are at the door greeting people, right? Like, how can they be responsible for this? This is just irresponsible across the board on the way everything has been handled and rolled out. It's very, very concerning. Ford shoots down idea of opening all retailers with strict conditions. I've talked about this already, but I'm going to talk about this here. A request made by major retailers and their executives who lead them to allow all retailer. I'm not sure if I read this whole thing. Hold on. Yeah, it was a duplicate. Sorry about that, everyone. Moving on. This is General Hillier, and he's dealing with the vaccines. And this whole 2-minute diatribe is just unbelievable. He draws the line. He basically says, like, we're all soldiers in this together. And if the soldiers in World War I could deal with the gas attacks, then we should be able to deal with sitting on our butts and staying away from each other. The problem is he doesn't ever address the survival rate, the fact that most of the deaths are in
of Ontario. They're tired.
People who are 80 and above. He doesn't address any of the serious questions and the serious concerns. $20,000 a month for this guy? Like, seriously, and he's not inspiring. Look at the response. One, well said, General, right? But there's quite a lot of trader and lots of people are not very happy with him generally, right? And some examples. Well, go have a look through the comments and you'll see what I mean. But people are not happy with this person. Derek Sloan, and they're trying to take Derek Sloan down for co-sponsoring this, but Conservative MP Derek Sloan has sponsored a petition in the House of Commons website that claims that COVID-19 vaccine is effectively human experimentation and questions the safety of the vaccines being developed. It has more than 22,000 signatures. And it says, the petition to the Government of Canada, whereas the Government of Canada does not conduct independent safety testing of vaccines, COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers are being granted legal immunity and will not be legally or financially liable for injury or death caused by their products. COVID-19 vaccine development is being rushed. Standard prudent safety protocols such as prior animal testing are being waived. COVID-19 vaccine currently under development are not tested against an inert placebo and are utilizing never before implemented technology that injects manufactured genetic materials. Long-term adverse effects of COVID-19 vaccination may not be known for many years. No coronavirus vaccine has ever been approved because of serious adverse effects, including death to test animals due to pathogenic priming. COVID-19 vaccines are not designed to prevent infection or transmission, and bypassing proper safety protocols means COVID-19 vaccination is effectively human experimentation. We, the undersigned citizens of Canada, call upon the Government of Canada to 1. Preserve and protect our ethical, legal, and moral right to informed consent. Legally ensure COVID-19 vaccines are voluntary. This choice must be without disadvantage or prejudice. That means they can't say, oh, you can't fly on our planes because you haven't had the vaccine. 3. Require the vaccine safety studies comply with standards equal to or exceeding other pharmaceutical products. 4. Create an independent committee with a broad range of stakeholder representatives, including citizen vaccine safety advocates. 5. Ensure no committee member has intellectual or financial conflicts of interest with with the pharmaceutical or medical industry. 6, grant this committee the power to independently review applications for approval of all vaccines, including COVID-19, and develop a vaccine injury compensation program whereby vaccine manufacturers are responsible for paying all costs related to compensation for those injured or killed by their vaccines. And so they go after Derek Sloan to punish him for daring to sponsor this. The 22,000 signatures means that the House has to respond. Global News is reporting human experimentation. Tory MP sponsors e-petition disputing assured coronavirus vaccine safety. I wanted to read this because of how many times it tells you the vaccine is going to be safe. It's not tested. They don't know it's going to be safe. Okay, it's 4 times. It's 4 times. Okay, we'll keep counting. Conservative MP Derek Sloan has sponsored a parliamentary e-petition that raises questions about the safety of a future coronavirus vaccine. It also states that bypassing proper safety protocols means COVID-19 vaccine is effectively human experimentation. His decision to sponsor the e-petition comes despite repeated assurances from both public health and government officials that the Health Canada will only approve a vaccine that is rigorously tested and safe to use. That's one. Meanwhile, the e-petition has already garnered 22,000 signatures, meaning the government will be forced to issue a response. While Sloan said he hasn't read the petition since it was tabled on November 3rd, he told reporters on Wednesday that it raised good points. On this particular petition, in all honesty, I haven't read it since I tabled it. There are a couple of weeks back. I think there's some good points in there, Sloan said. I'd obviously have to look at every single point to tell you if I agree or disagree, but my general philosophy is petitions are another way to give constituents and Canadians a voice. Public Health has repeatedly reiterated that no vaccine would be approved in Canada without a firm confirmation that it's safe to use. Don't worry, citizen, it's going to be fine, right? In this case, the sponsor is from Dorchester. I just scrolled down a little bit, which is not Sloan's riding. However, Sloan did say in a statement that he generally sponsored any e-petition that he feels reflects his constituents have, regardless of whether they reflect his personal convictions. I scroll down again. I do not agree that by asking relevant, timely questions about various COVID-19 vaccine candidates that a person is therefore somehow funneling anti-vaccine sentiment, as you have characterized it, he said, responding to Global News questions about whether he is concerned that the petition could boost anti-vaccine sentiment. The regulatory process is rigorous, and the federal government would only provide vaccines that have gone through safety evaluations and efficacy evaluations, Dr. Tam said. Making sure COVID-19 vaccine is safe before approving it is Health Canada's priority, and when a vaccine is ready, Canada will be ready, Health Minister Patty Haydu said in a tweet on Tuesday. How many times do you have to assure everybody it's going to be safe? This is funny. Jagmeet Singh's funny. NDP Jagmeet Singh slammed Sloan's decision to sponsor the e-petition during a Wednesday press conference. That's an embarrassment, and I hope that type of thinking is rejected soundly, and that we encourage people to follow the best medical advice and the experts' advice around getting vaccinated, Singh said. Oh, the advice that he decides, right? But I think that this is funny because, here's how long it usually takes to develop a vaccine. I've gone through this before, but link is in the description. There's some that don't have a vaccine available that have been around for a very long time. For 100 years, HSV, been around for 100 years, and no vaccine yet. And very interesting how quickly this is coming to market. But Jagmeet Singh, champion of the people, NDP leader, is saying, this is just funny, Christina, a single mom, was working 3 jobs before the pandemic to provide for her kids, but now she's down to 1 and is struggling to make ends meet. For her, a vaccine means going back to work. We need a plan for vaccines to help Christina's family and others get back to work. We've got to get her back to working her 3 jobs to support her family in Canada, says the leader of the NDP. Maybe, just maybe, we've got to figure out a way that Christina could have 1 job and work for her family, right? And that would be enough to care for her family, right? Rather than having 3 jobs, Jagmeet? Because having 3 jobs implies that 1 job's not enough. And so you have to go out and get more jobs, right? And so you're less stable, or more stable if you've got multiple strains of income, right? I guess if she had only 1 job and she lost that job, she didn't have 2 others to fall back on. But I just think it's really interesting, right? He's going to slam Derek Sloan for daring to bring up concerns of his constituents in a way by sponsoring a petition. And at the same time, he's fighting for the little guy by saying, you know what we've got to do for Christina? We've got to get Christina back to work. She's only working, 18 hours a week? She's got another 40 she could work. So we've got to get her back to work, right? For her family's sake. Really. Fiscal update shows a government totally divorced from reality. Yeah, I went through this. This is, it's an okay article. It's a little bit hard to read. He talks about how there's no fiscal anchors. And basically, he's saying how he sat there in shocked silence at first. He said, what does this have to do with anything? This doesn't help anything. Yeah, what does this update have to do with anything? It doesn't help anything. It's a good article, but it just doesn't translate well. So go read it if you're interested. Basically, everybody's saying these liberals are out to lunch. These liberals are out to lunch. Pierre Poilievre says, whatever politicians claim they have a multi-billion-dollar spending idea that pays for itself. Ask why then it needs government money. Yes, it is a good question. Why do you need our money if it's going to pay for itself? Here's Blacklock's reporter. Kenyan door-to-door sales company that received Canadian federal subsidies loses $51 million. Spokesperson Shelley McLean describes losses as normal. Cabinet launched the FinDev Canada 3 years ago to support private sector investment in developing countries. Kenyan company M-Kopa earlier received celebrity endorsement from Barack Obama and Al Gore. Ooh, right? But the other day, the indigenous, the Liberal government has confirmed that they will break the promise of delivering the water to every indigenous place that needs it by March 2021. So, and I think that that's funny, right? We're spending millions of dollars to invest in companies that go bankrupt and fold, right? And in other countries, but we still can't get fresh, clean drinking water to all of our citizens in Canada because reasons, right? Canada's cost of pandemic tops 1.5 trillion. Canadians will eventually realize they have a national government in Ottawa that is woke but broke. Yeah, I think that the chickens are going to come home to roost, and I hope that it's not as terrible as the projections look. But we're certainly not in as strong a situation for a rebound as we were in 2008. And the forced closure of a lot of businesses, despite any evidence that they're the ones causing this, and to send a message to citizens to not make multiple stops on the way home. I just don't know that's going to hold up in court. I just don't think it is. Ooh, I'm a little long today. Usually I would go into this. I would really dive into something like this. Dr. Kaur is tweeting out, she says, Canadian-based researchers, experts also approached with lucrative packages funded by CCP's United Front. China encourages these researchers to transmit their knowledge to China in exchange for salaries, research funding, lab spaces, and other incentives. So it's very interesting, again, considering what information we've gotten in the last few weeks about China's ownership and involvement with Dominion voting systems. I think they purchased it in October of last October. Maybe not 2020, but I think maybe 2018. Recently, anyway. And China's involvement in the release of COVID-19 and all of the stuff that's been swirling around China in the last little while. This is just another arrow in the quiver, right? Like this is just another deeply concerning thing to look into, right? How much research has been just shared at the same time with China? How much research have we paid for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Very concerning issues, very concerning things happening in our country. Mr. Gallibo, he's very concerning. This Canadian push for Canadian content and diversity in Canadian content and millions of dollars. This guy goes through a big long thread about basically why it's a terrible idea, and it's a terrible idea. Canadians support Netflix sales tax. More Facebook regulation, polls suggest. Yeah, we need more government overreach. This reads more and more like Soviet era propaganda because it's all the same. This poll says anything you want it to say. Poll will definitely back up your crazy draconian dictatorship dreams because you go to the lunchroom and be like, yeah, what do you guys think this? 5 out of 10. Perfect. They've got polls on websites. You can manipulate polls. Look at the presidential election, right? How many? Oh, we need the poll to say this, right? I've got zero faith in any of this. This is manufacturing consent. No Canadian said, you know what we need? More government intervention in Facebook, and I should pay a bit more for my Netflix because the government isn't getting enough. They're not getting enough. I'm sick and tired of the government being shortchanged from my Netflix subscription. I said this like 3 weeks ago. They're going to tax Netflix. This is hilarious. Go watch this. This woman is if she doesn't get her own talk show, like she could be Sally Jesse Raphael. She could interview a whole slew of people who there would be housewives home watching and COVID people, like fearful COVID people watching her show up and down. And she would just be, it's so funny. Like the end. Here, I'll just play the last part.
Did you?
Hold on.
Wrong. I can go to prison. Did you?
Okay,
I watched it live last night, and she was just as funny the whole time. Maybe it doesn't translate, but man, this was funny. Go watch this, and if you can watch more of this, it's very interesting to watch the legislators intimidate witnesses who are telling them that your election thingy there wasn't as secure as you think it is, or as you're telling us that you think it is. Very interesting stuff happening down here. But she's one heck of a witness. The legislator tells her the witness before you was discredited, implying that she's going to be discredited, right? And she comes right back and she's like, well, that she should be discredited. She wasn't even there. She's like, I worked for Dominion. She was great to watch. It was super funny. So if you have some time, go check out this segment of Giuliani's thing last night. I think it was in Michigan, but I could be wrong. But anyway, this is very, very, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. And Trump made a big speech yesterday talking about the election interference. It was the speech I've been waiting, I think, 4 years to see. As soon as he was elected in 2016, I expected a speech like that. Like, things are not what you think, America. And so that was the speech I was expecting. So there you go. That's something that's happening. And I think that the game's in the open now. I think that everybody realizes exactly what Trump is doing. And I think Trump's still got 1 or 2 more turns because I don't think he's going for a regular court. I think these people are going to, not these people, not her, but the legislators here are going to certify the election for Biden. And I think that at that point, the military will take over because the systemic rot. And I think that that's always been the plan. I think that the plan was, we're going to let them do the whole thing, certify it, fight them legally every step of the way, do the dog and pony show, have the injunctions, file everything, make it take as long as you can. And as soon as things get as soon as that's signed up, trap set, sprung, done, and they're done. So I think that this is part of the show. So yeah, but I could be wrong. Who knows, man? But I think we're gonna find out. And it's gonna be, if this is any indication, it's gonna be super, super fun. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful